Good morning, Matt.
Hey, Rick, what's happening, buddy?
You, man, how was the beach?
Spectacular. I want to go back.
Yeah.
It's already like kind of cold here in Georgia. I'm kind of a wimp. I think it was like 50 this morning.
Already putting on our winter coats down here. For those of you guys in the Northeast, we don't have much tolerance for that.
Ugh, can't do it. What's going on with you?
Not a lot, man. Just work, Good stuff. Very productive. Lots of franchise activity happening in the neighborhood. So it's all good, man.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, digging it. You better get ready.
I'm ready. Put me to work.
We're going to open 1,000 before the end of the year. We're going to be programming for another 1,000 clubs.
Let's do it.
All right, I'm ready.
Stacking
I'm ready
on
when
thousands.
you are.
I got it in my contract that it goes up by like 1,000 clubs at a time.
Yeah, it's $100,000 per year per club. So it's good. So you're going to be making $50 million a year.
Sweet.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, let's talk about that after the, can we podcast about that? How I'm going to get that money? Hey, you know what we are going to talk about is marketing.
Yeah.
And how much you should spend on marketing. And this question came up because I do a little bit of teaching for an entrepreneur class at a local college. And they chose our business to use as their project for this semester. And they're basically working on marketing. So they have 35 people in the class, and some of them are working on the video, some are working on content. So, so they're each splitting it up. So I'm having these conversations with them once every couple of weeks. I jump on a Zoom call at night because it's a night class. Mm-hmm. Most of these folks are young professionals, so they're pretty sharp. And just see if they can come up with any new ideas. And we do business to consumer, so we market to our clients, and then we have B2B, which is like marketing the franchise, and that's a little bit more complex. So we chose, hey, just help us market to our customers.
Okay.
So they're coming up with some cool ideas, but one of them around marketing was how much should you spend? What
to acquire new members?
Yeah, and basically just in general. And I get that question from licensees a good bit. So I'm still coaching on the licensing side as well, and you talk to folks, and I mean, customer acquisition is the thing right now, right? Most of us have had a little bit of blip on the radar from COVID, and we're trying to scratch our way back to that normal. And so what type of techniques, but then also like how much should I spend on my marketing?
Would you say people just usually just randomly throw stuff out there and have no plan? Or
I would say that most people drastically underspend on marketing. Yeah, and it's one of these things where, you're putting the money out and you want to see an immediate return on investment. So what I want to describe today to everyone is some just general business formulas. They're not necessarily directly from fitness. These are just general business formulas that you can use to come up with to decide how much you should be spending on your marketing.
Cool.
Right? And so there's really two sides to the equation. One is, what are you making from a customer? So a client, whatever that is, right? And that means how much are they paying you? And then how long are they paying you? So the term in any industry that they use is lifetime value. The acronym is obviously LTV. And if you just Google LTV versus acquisition cost formulas, you may read somewhere that for your revenue from a client. So first of all, I would say to take a step back, if you don't know that number, you need to know that number.
Right. First thing, go and dig in and see how long your average customer stays and what they pay month over month and in overall. And so determine then what the lifetime value of a customer is. The higher that you can get that number and the more profitable that you are, obviously that affords you more budget to spend on acquisition on the front end. So if you're running a bad business, meaning you don't have good profit margin, then you're not going to be able to afford acquisition cost marketing, right? And the problem with that is that's the way that you beat your competitors, almost every market. One reason that we've been around for 30 years is that we've run a good business, we run good margins, we can withstand some mild ups and downs, and it allowed us to do things like when we were allowed to reopen, we knew that other clubs were under some financial strain, so we turned up our marketing budget. Why? Because there's people who are looking for a new normal, whatever that is. Maybe this little break, stay home break broke their normal routine. And so they're looking for a new gym. So now it's a great time to get in front of them, right? Well, because we were running a decent business and have a good lifetime value, and we can talk about that, then we were able to invest more for the acquisition on the front end and help grow the business. And we're still doing that now. And so
The formula for lifetime value, again, is how long do your customers stay and how much do they pay you? So once you have that nailed down, then you look at formulas. And if you just Google that formula as an example for general business, I think the example that will pop up first will be software. And they will say that you can spend a 1 to 3 customer acquisition cost to lifetime value of a customer. So imagine if a customer then is worth $3,000 as an example for you, you could spend up to $1,000 in the software business. Now, they would also tell you, or this formula in general, whatever these ratios are, that anything above that, so if you're at a 5 to 1, you should actually be spending more on acquisition because you have your ratios dialed in. I think that for the fitness business, that's really low.
Where should we be?
10, anything above 10 is good. So if you look at our customers as an example, our average stay is 36 months. They pay close to $300 a month. So you can round up down a little bit. You're going to end up with around $10,000. So the lifetime value of one of our customers is $10,000. So then based on that formula, what would I be able to spend on the front end? If I was at a 10 to 1 customer acquisition cost, I could spend $1,000 to get a new customer. Now that's a lot of money. We don't spend that much.
Yeah, that's a chunk.
Yeah. So and remember, so you asked me before when I was saying, hey, this is what we're going to cover today. You would ask me like percentages of leads that end up as clients, right? And that's a great question. So if we're running digital advertising, which is what most of us are doing right now, Google and Facebook, because of the environment, we can't really get out and do the community outreach events and things. We can get referrals, but there's not a lot of community events going on. So we're mostly digital. Good digital, processes. So, getting the lead, getting them to then book, getting them to then show, and then closing them into a membership, that process all the way through leaves you with about 20%. So if you're going to get 100 leads, right, you're going to get 20 people to sign up at your gym. So customer acquisition cost is not cost per lead, it's cost per customer. So if it costs me $1,000, right, to get 100 leads, that's one thing, but I really only end up with 20 new customers. So it's 1,000 divided by 20 would be my acquisition cost.
Right.
So our acquisition cost here ranges anywhere from $200 to $400 a month, depending. If you looked at that, if my lifetime value was low, let's say we were running a boot camp business where we know the price threshold is lower and the stay at these places is shorter. So if I'm collecting $120 a month for 4 months, now I'm at what, $480? So I can only afford to spend maybe $100, maybe even less to get a new customer. Well, the great thing about having a personal training brand is our lifetime value is $10,000. So I can literally outspend my competitors to grab their attention, right? And drive more leads. And then I know I'm going to get 20% of those in the gym. That formula stays. If your processes are clean, that process or that formula stays pretty consistent, right? So anybody that's in any business should know these two metrics, but really in fitness, it's important because typically we'll see someone who is doing a decent revenue, they want to grow, and they're not spending enough on marketing, period. If you look at the concept in Jim Collins's book, Great by Choice, he has a concept in there called bullets before cannonballs. The scenario is that there's 2 ships and they're at war, right? They're basically battling each other. And let's say you had a finite amount of gunpowder, and that gunpowder in this case would be your budget for marketing. Would you just pick a channel for marketing, pour all of your gunpowder into that, and fire it, hoping you landed on an audience, or in this case, hoping you hit the other ship?
Probably not.
Right, because if you miss, you're out of money, right? And that's what I think a lot of people do. They get all excited. Maybe they're sold into some agency or something. They pour a bunch of money into it. They don't hit, right? They don't get a return on their investment in their mind. And then they just like, marketing sucks. I'm not going to do it. And the problem with that is the strategy is a bit broken. So in this scenario of bullets before cannonballs, you would take your budget or a little bit of your gunpowder, pour it into a rifle or 2, and see if you can get your range. So an example for this for Facebook would be, we're going to split test some ads, different creative, different hooks, things like that. And if we're getting a lot of traction with one over, now we're finding our range. So in the ship scenario, we're pinging a few off the hull. Once we feel good about that and our lead cost is a bit lower, getting good traction, getting good quality leads from these, then we're going to take the rest of that gunpowder, and in this case, my budget,
pour it in and we're going to fire that cannonball and sink that ship. Or in this case, I'm going to pour a bunch of money on these ads and we're going to get good quality chunk of leads in at a lower cost per lead. We know we're going to get 20% to sign up if we run our processes right every single time. And then that's how you determine it. But you start with the real high level metrics. And if you don't have those, find out what your lifetime value is. How long do they stay? How much do they pay? The better business you run on the back end, making people happy or keeping them, the higher that number is going to get, obviously. Right. That's going to really allow you to spend more on the front end for your marketing. If you're more than a 10-to-1, should you spend more money on marketing? I would say yes, just depending on where you are. If you look at our women's gym as an example, we're full all the time.
Right.
So we can't spend that money because we're literally out of capacity. So what do we do there? Well, if we have a little bit of churn, we just turn our marketing on, pump it back to full, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. That's maintenance. That's different.
Yeah, it probably doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, we don't run into that with a lot of other brands or a lot of other gyms. Most of them are really concerned with acquisition. But when you look at what they're doing in revenue, they're not spending enough on marketing to really grow at all anyway. And it may be lack of knowledge. It may be the fact that they don't understand this formula and they don't understand what they need to spend, right? But most people are grossly underspending on their marketing.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, imagine, digital marketing, which we're kind of a lot of us are forced to do, especially right now. They maybe don't even understand how many leads it takes just to get actual customers, because it takes a lot. I mean, 20% for what we shoot for. I mean, that's, it's a lot of people coming through your door, or hope you get to your door, right?
Well, look at the budget on that. So, if there's some marketing campaigns where we'll spend, $40 per lead because Atlanta's a busy market. Now that's kind of high, but it happens in a personal training brand, certainly, because it's a higher, just by default, it says personal training on the door. We might get a lead that's just not financially qualified to come in. So that is going to happen more often. So $40 leads, if I want 100 leads, if I want to net 20 new customers, not even net, let's say we have a little bit of churn, but I need to bring on 20 new customers this month. I need 100 leads, period. If it's $40 a lead, that's $4,000 that I have to spend.
Right.
Well, if you told someone, hey, you're going to spend $4,000 for 20 customers, they're like, oh, I'm not going to spend that, right? But if you're spending $4,000 to make 20 times 10,000, right? These customers are going to be worth $200,000 for your business.
Right.
Not all up front, I get that, but that's the lifetime value over the next 3 years. You'd spend that all day, every day.
Absolutely.
That's why we're having this conversation, because if you understand these metrics, you feel a lot better about acquisition costs on the front end. Otherwise, you just say, wow, I just poured out $4,000, only have 20 customers.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to swallow for some people, for sure.
Well, and that's why it all starts with, if you're not running a good business, fix your back end first. Because if you're not profitable, if you're just driving a decent gross revenue, but you're at 10% margins, right, you're not going to have enough to invest. So there's a lot that goes into what is a simple high-level metric. But I think it goes without saying, if you're listening to this podcast, you need to run a good business with decent margins. Right. If you do that, then you start looking at these formulas. You determine lifetime value, and then you can afford to spend money on this acquisition cost.
You always talk about, it's very expensive in Atlanta, a lot of, competition. And you're always saying, if you don't even answer the phone, you're basically throwing $100 down the toilet, right?
That's so true. Well, we talk about that. We've got a great person working at the desk now, and she's running point answering the phone. And thankfully, she really gets it, because I would tell her, listen, these leads are costing me $40, right? And so certainly if they're calling, that's a pretty good lead. So say it's from a Google ad and they just click call, right? Okay, it's expensive. So if it's costing me $40 or $50, if you don't answer the phone, if they're calling, more than likely we're going to get them to come in, and then we're going to get them to turn into a customer. So you're taking my $250 for that lead and just basically lighting it on fire and dropping it out on the sidewalk. And you might really be taking $10,000 and putting it out on the sidewalk and building a bonfire and eating s'mores with it. So these are metrics that you need to determine, but to your point, Matt, it's really easy to pass that down to your team. And I think it's important for your team to understand business. And it's important for someone that's answering your phone to understand what this customer could be worth and what we're foregoing if you accidentally left the phone at the desk while you were in the laundry room.
Sure.
Right? It's really, really important. And thankfully, we've got a team now that's bought in on that.
Well, how many trainers and front desk people out there actually know all this stuff? So it's probably a conversation that needs to happen.
I agree. If you're an owner, I would say dial in these metrics. You're probably underspending on your marketing. If you can't afford to do it, you need to fix your back end first. Once you do that, probably need to spend more. And then absolutely, if you're going to spend the money, have the mechanisms, whether it's automation,
systems, people. Everybody has to be trained on sales and phone scripts and everything that we're doing. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that helps. That was the conversation I had with the class. Was like, hey, here's how much we can spend each month. So we've got a pretty hefty budget for it. And if you guys land on any new techniques, I mean, these are a bunch of fresh eyes and minds. Who knows what we'll come up with? But right now, I feel like we're doing pretty good with our digital stuff. Cool. Does that make sense, though, overall?
It's great.
Yeah, it's kind of high level, but I hope that helps. And that's certainly one of the lenses that we look at when we decide on marketing budget.
That's awesome.
All right, buddy. Thanks.